Welcome to PCB Chat, where we talk with experts across the printed circuit design, manufacturing, and electronic supply chain fields. I'm Mike Buetow, editor of PCDNF and Circuits Assembly. My guest today is Wally Rhines. Wally has been a regular on PCB Chat since we launched the program in 2018. And he has seen just about everything, I think, over his 45 plus years in semiconductor and PCB design. He's with us today to discuss the latest ESDA numbers on behalf of the ESD Alliance. Good to catch up with you again, Wally.
Good to see you, Mike. And it's good times for EDA once again.
So today we'll be discussing the third quarter 2021 market numbers from the ESD Alliance. Those are for the period ending September 30th, 2021, and were released the week of January 17th, 2022. Let's just jump right in, Wally. What are the highlights?
So the biggest highlight is the 17% overall growth for worldwide EDA revenue. Another really remarkable level when you consider the growth rate of all the customers of EDA is somewhat less than that. And so what it means is more and more people are doing design. Now, within that, one that I know is near and dear to you is a very strong quarter for printed circuit board and multi-chip module layout. It was up 13% in schematics. It was up overall, at about 14.5%. Very good. It's bounced back from it had gotten a little lower for a while, but over the 5-year period, it's been one of the strong growth areas of the EDA industry, probably due to all the systems design activity, automotive and other complex systems that use printed circuit board. And when I look within the numbers in PCB, we see strength in PCB schematic at 13%, the analysis tools at 17%, the physical design, the biggest category is 16.4%, and package design at 17.6%. And then the other category at 36%. So that rolls up to a total of 14.5. The only weak area was in libraries and data management. It was essentially flat, but overall, this reflects strength. And we did hear that in some of the public announcements. Cadence reflected in their quarterly announcement that the system part of the business was strong. So I think this has credibility for being a very broad level of support for design of products using printed circuit boards.
And now a word from our sponsor. There is so much more to board design than placing parts and connecting the signals electrically. A new half-day webinar brought to you by PCB Today talks about good practices for building footprints, how parts might be placed for manufacturability, routing practices that are helpful, trace widths and spacings that are producible, a stack-up structure that can realistically get the impedance and return needed, and documentation for the manufacturer that is complete and understandable. Developed by Susie Webb, a senior design engineer, this presentation is not about how to build a board, but rather about the practical things the board engineer can do to help make fabrication and assembly easier and therefore increase yields and lower the cost for all. Visit PCBtoday.com. That's PCB number 2 DAY.com for details about this upcoming webinar. Now back to the show. So let me just dive into something real quick. With respect to the libraries, a lot of EDA companies offer standalone library software, parts, tools and things like that. For the high-end tools, my understanding is OEMs or designers will purchase those tools in part because they come with very extensive libraries. Is that correct? And if so, does the vendor break out, or can they even break out the value of the library from the value of the layout and placement routing aspect of the tool?
Well, I'm sure they all try to. One of the interesting parts from what you mentioned is the lock-in provided. If your corporation has a massive library they build up over time in a particular library management tool, you as a designer are not likely to buck that trend. But all of these library management tools, I believe, now take advantage of being able to search the internet and get parts information from the internet. So there is a sort of dynamic capability. It's not just a packaged set of parts. But I might note there are lots of big companies that build a lot more into their library and data management than just the specification for the parts and the pinout. They build in their experience with reliability, their preferred vendors, their quality record, and other things. And that becomes a massive database that helps these companies assure that their designs will be well supported, that they'll deal with vendors they trust. And so it's something that does cause inertia. It prevents a new data management tool from just coming in and taking over the market.
Going back to the overall PCB and MCM market, we talked about in terms of percentages, but in terms of actual dollar value, it was almost a $300 million quarter. I mean, that's an annual run rate of $1.2 billion. That's pretty good.
That really is. So sometime in the last year, we passed the $1 billion mark for printed circuit board design. And now this is 1.05. As you say, a $300 million quarter would be 1.2. So that's getting up there. But then so is the whole EDA industry, which is approaching a $14 billion per year business. Very recently that it was a $10 billion business. So things are on fire, helped by all the system design companies. Companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Alibaba, all these do both printed circuit board design and IC design. And so they are customers who historically spent little, if anything, on EDA. Now they are big customers. They're highlighted as prime movers in IC design, but every IC is done for a purpose, and that usually means a new printed circuit board.
Now, in looking at some of the geographical numbers, the PCB and MCM looks like that was up across the board as well in every major region.
Except Japan, right. So Japan was weak. Judging from the prior history, this looks like just a quarterly fluctuation, because if you look at the 4-quarter moving average, the PCB has been one of the areas that has been very strong in Japan. It's running 8%. So the fact that it was down this quarter, I wouldn't put too much credence in that. And the fact that North America and Europe were above 20% and the PAC Rim almost 20%, says that, wow, there is a lot of need for design tools.
We have geopolitical issues in Eastern Europe. We have inflation in many countries, and yes, the pandemic. Yet the market keeps chugging along. Anything else going on in the world that would give you pause about the industry going forward?
The only thing that gives me pause is whether the current COVID spread can cause major delays in things that would actually cause people to slow down design activity. In general, for semiconductors, the shortages have had apparently little, if any, impact on EDA design. Design continues whether you can get the parts or not, because you know you're going to need the new design. But I did see one interesting thing for the automotive sector, and that's the discussion that Tesla initiated, saying that one of the reasons they could deal with shortages was they were redesigning through software their ability to use parts that were available. Well, sounds good. And several others, in fact, Volkswagen indicated they were doing the same thing, just not as broadly. But when I think about that, I say if you redesign to use a different microcontroller, then you're going to have a different printed circuit board design. So it's not just software, it's redesign the system. And that could, in fact, be stimulating demand. Maybe a small effect, but still could be an effect on the demand for automotive, which is a major portion of the printed circuit board design industry, and for which there are so many companies developing electric cars. The last count, we had 550 companies that had indicated that they would introduce either cars or light trucks that were powered by batteries. That sort of indicates a major changeover. You do a major changeover, you do a lot of redesign, and that means system redesign, which generates a need for printed circuit board and multi-chip module.
We have electrification, we have IoT, we have 5G. We really do have three major areas that are not only exploding in market growth, but also in terms of the number of companies jumping in for the opportunities. I did read that article on Tesla, by the way, and it was fascinating. One of the things that jumped out at me, and I don't know if you can comment on this, is that they reported that the number of electronic components in a Tesla vehicle was somewhere on the order of maybe 2,000 or so, which seemed to me to be frankly low. I thought it was more around 20,000 in an electric vehicle, not 2,000.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that the people who haven't followed the industry may be deceived by, and that is their view that with the increased electronics intelligence, the driver assist capabilities, the move toward autonomous drive, that the number of integrated circuits is going to explode. But if you look at history, that's not what happens. We do more integration every year. We do more with the same chips or the same number of chips. And so while the bill of materials has consistently risen over the years for semiconductors, it tends to be a relatively slow growth compared to other sectors, partly, I believe, because cars are sold at price points. So you can afford a $30,000 car. Okay, this is what your choices are. So if you double the electronics in the car, you can't double what is a significant portion of the bill of materials. But fortunately, innovative designers, both for integrated circuits and printed circuit boards, find ways to integrate those parts down so the parts count doesn't grow that much. And so you can stay within your price points for the vehicle, and the total revenue for the semiconductor industry for automotive stays in the 10% range. It was down to 7 or 8%. Now it's 10 or 11, but it doesn't soar to 50% or something like that.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Let's talk about the employment data.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Of course, we don't have it by PCB versus IC, but you have to believe it is so strong that it's probably strong everywhere. We had an 8.7% increase in the number of people employed by the electronic design automation industry worldwide. That's a remarkable growth rate. It almost always grows. They're just in a severe recession, it will decline some, but in general, it's been a steady grower, but not at this rate. This rate is very rapid, and you think about 50,000 people employed by the EDA industry. Wow, I hope they're developing a lot of tools and a lot of IP. So we'll see.
Well, heady times for sure. Wally, any other observations or things that jump out at you from the third quarter data?
Well, one other thing, it's a minor effect. The package design is a $10 million a quarter kind of business that is categorized with printed circuit board, a pretty small number in $1 billion business, but it was up 17%. And when I listen to companies like Taiwan Semiconductor talking about new capabilities, all of the multi-die approaches to packaging, stacking, interposers, I have to believe this is one to watch. I think this will become a more important part of the printed circuit board design process.
Well, we will certainly keep an eye on that. Thank you, as always, Wally, for joining us, and we're certainly pleased to hear the industry keeps moving at quite a rapid and impressive pace.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to talk, and it's good to see the industry growing the way it is.
For PCB Chat, this is Mike Buetow. Have a nice day.